Good morning and welcome to the Talking Cafe. It's nice to see you all. My name's Jane Cousins and I'm the village agent for the Taunton Deane area. I'm relatively new in post and this is the first time that I've done a Talking Cafe, so I'm hoping everything goes well today. Today we're continuing the celebrations for International Women's Day. And International Women's Day celebrated all over the world on March the 8th, and it was first celebrated in 1975, although the move towards equality for women began much earlier than that, way back in the 1870s, when the campaign for women's rights began for women to vote. So International Women's Day is an opportunity to celebrate how far women have reached in terms of equality. And we've come a long way, but there's still a long way to go. The theme for 2021 is Women in Leadership. So in today's Talking Cafe, we'll be talking about inspirational women, women's rights, and support groups for women. We have two special guests. And that's Fodo Higginson, who's a musician and director for the Moorvale Creative CIC, and Marilyn Simmons, who's from the Women's Institute. So welcome, ladies, and thank you very much for coming on. I'm here today with my colleague, Carrie Korf, who works as a community agent for the Community Council for Somerset. And Carrie's going to talk to us about some inspirational women. So over to you, Carrie.
Thank you. Well, actually, Jane, you mentioned, you touched on some of the things I was going to talk about, but essentially I was going to do a quick recap, actually, about International Women's Day, and just a quick recap about the women's movement and how far we've come, and play the video of women's just a quick short video of women leaders across the world. So, as you touched on, the women's movement really came out of the whole unrest that was happening at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, coming out of industrialisation, urbanisation, terrible factory conditions, appalling conditions. And in fact, it was even early as 1868 that Millicent Fawcett got her petition together to get signatures for the first petition for the women's right to vote in the UK. And even in 1888, it was Clementina Black, who was the secretary of the Women's Trade Union, who put forward a resolution about equal pay to the Trade Union Congress. So, then we take it forward to beginning of the 20th century. And of course, before the First World War, you got the strikes in America, 1908, 15,000 women out on the streets. And of course, in the UK, in 1914, there was a march from Bow to Trafalgar Square. And that was when Emily Pankhurst was arrested in front of Charing Cross Station. So these are hard fought for campaigns, weren't they? And then obviously we were moving on through there was strikes and campaigns against the war, in fact, before the start of the First World War, and after the First World War, the Russians, Europeans were choosing to say, no, we don't want to go to war, and express solidarity with other women across the world. So what else is going on? Then after, in fact, it was 1909, after that strike in America, that there was declared a National Women's Day in America, and then that moved to Europe in Denmark, and that's actually how it's grown from there. And of course, so following on from all the suffragette movement, we know they won the right to vote for us, thank goodness. and 1928. And of course, legislation's moved on since. And in fact, the 1970s, big civil unrest right across America, and civil rights moving forward, and feminists are at the heart of that. We had a lot of free flow of thinking across the board. I mean, I remember Spare Rib. I don't know if anybody else remembers that. Our Bodies, Ourselves. These are all sort of strong, influential writers and thinkers at the time that have affected women now. And in fact, when I think about it, we went out on a Reclaim the Night marches, and now, of course, we have the Me Too movement. So, you know, things have changed, but there's still a long way to go. So, yes, it's been celebrated since 1975, since, as you say, the United Nations took it up. And, you know, as I say, we have come a long way. I think women are more visual now, more visible, perhaps, more vocal, perhaps more respected. But yeah, there's still a long way to go, particularly around equal pay. I think I should really just touch on the fact that in 1961, we had the contraceptive pill, we had the Abortion Act, and of course, just the formation of the NHS after the war just made a huge difference to women's health and lives. So, you know, we got the Equal Pay Act in 1970, which again has impacted us now. And I think it's very easy to kind of forget that these have all been, you know, the gains that we've got now, we're very privileged to have because of all the women that have gone before. So, on that note, I think it might be a good time to just play our little video. Bear with me for a couple of minutes, and then we'll come on to our chat. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, I know it's a bit strident, that music, but you know, it puts the message across, doesn't it? In terms of just demonstrating how far we've got. And I just wonder if, you know, we all knew all those women. I certainly didn't before I saw that video. And it was really good to see some young women on there. You know, the Malala, Yousafzai, I want to say, from Pakistan, and Greta Thunberg, just extraordinary young women. And we're very lucky in Somerset. We've got 3 out of the 4 district councils are actually led by women. In Taunton Deane, we've got the councillor Federica Smith-Roberts, who's really fantastic. She's done a lot during lockdown in the community. South Somerset, Councillor Val Ketch and Councillor Ross Wyke in Mendip, so hats off to them. And, you know, I'd like at this point to put out a call out for any local women that you'd like to celebrate and say that who you admire and want to thank, really. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Elaine Fulford, who works at Besson Trust, who just unceasingly gives her time and energy to support people in need. Fantastic. So we're moving sort of on to what things do make a difference. How do we make a difference? And thinking about the musicians and writers and everybody like that we've sort of have influenced us. So I'd like to introduce Fodo at this point. Fodo, you're a singer, songwriter, community muso, town councillor, and generally community contributor, I'd say an activist. And I just thought I'd invite you on because we met a long time ago. We met at the Child Festival, Women in Music, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
I just thought, I mean, you're amazing. You're also director of Moorvale Creative CIC. And I should declare an interest because I am too, but you do the hard work. So I've got my day job. But you've got great energy levels. And one thing I want to ask you at some point in this slot is whether you'd like to give us a sisterhood song to raise our energy levels. Whether you'd like to do that now or just after we have our chat.
I don't mind, whatever you think is appropriate. I was going to sing Sisters Are Doing It For Themselves, and I was hoping you'd share the lyrics so everyone could just join in. But we could do it right at the end of the session. It might be a nice thing to end with. Okay. Or end of our chat. You decide. Okay, well let's get flowing a bit now. I'm sort of interested in your personal journey and how you got into the women's movement and what you've been doing to support it, and what changes you've seen perhaps that you think are interesting. Okay, so right back at the beginning, I had a mum who discovered the women's movement in the 60s. On the sort of edge of it, but it was kind of it became influential in my life. She was very open about discussions about certain things and rights for women, and she'd had to leave school at 16 and go out to work because her parents she needed to bring in an income to the household. So when she had us, she went back and got an education. So I saw her go through that, getting her A levels, getting her degree, and she was very proud of herself. So we kind of had that going on. And then I was very involved with Woodcraft Folk as a child and as a teenager, and we went on all the Rock Against Racism marches. And I actually went on a march with a friend of mine. We went on an abortion march, pro-abortion, when we were 13. So that was my sort of, I had friends around me. We were into women's rights. We were into all sorts of rights for all sorts of people, but we were also into women's rights. And so it started at a young age and went off to Bristol Poly, as it was then. It wasn't a university. Led the women's group there. Led a Reclaim the Night march in Bristol back in the 80s, and was kind of actively involved in other women's groups in the city. And it's just stayed, and it sort of rolls along. It's part of my life.
Go away. It'd be nice if we didn't have to worry about it, wouldn't it? And who are the major sort of? Can you name any? Who are your favourite musicians that sort of have influenced you, and who you think are important in terms of the women's voice?
I would say, I think there's loads, but Sweet Honey in the Rock.
Okay,
you know, I discovered Sweet Honey in the Rock. If you don't know them, check them out. African American women, the lineup changes. They sing a cappella, but they sing about all sorts of black rights, women's rights, all sorts of issues, and they're just incredible. So I think they're brilliant. A lot of the women who came through that, or a lot of the words that they take for original material come from women who were part of the civil rights movement, women who we don't know their names. We've forgotten their names because we remember the men in the civil rights movement of America, the black civil rights movement. And then for me, Annie DeFranco is on a pedestal for me. As anyone who knows me will know that she went out and about. She was a sort of folky punk woman with her little guitar, and she just rocked it out. And then the big record companies came along and said, we want some of what you're offering, and she said no, and she set up her own record company at the age of 19. And for that level of guts to stand up to the music industry. And she's an activist as well as a feminist, as well as an amazing lyricist and an incredible guitarist. So she's there.
When I put the call out, I've got echo. Let me remove that one. When I put a call out for this, there was talks about Bette Midler, you mentioned, Jane. I was thinking about Grace Jones, Joan on the Trading. There's so many, isn't there? Just the list goes on. We could be here forever. But anyway, do pop up any of your favourite musicians on the live chat, any writers and that kind of thing. It'd be lovely to talk about women writers, but I don't actually think we've got time today. I just wanted to as well, just again about becoming a town councillor, and your thoughts of why do you think that's important and important for women to get involved?
It's fun. I mean, I'm a town councillor in Wiveliscombe, so it's the equivalent of a parish council, or I guess we just call it town council historically. But the kind of issues we deal with might seem a little bit mundane, but they're the kind of things that are actually really important for local communities. So even if you don't think you want to be a town councillor, if you just get actively involved in your community, you'll find that your community evolves. And women's voices are so important. So one example that I could give is back in Victorian times, there was what was called the Urinary Leash. So men could go out and about. We had cities growing and growing, and men could go out, and if they needed a wee, well, they just stood somewhere. Not very nice, but that's what they did. But women couldn't do that. So women had this leash. So there was a campaign to have public toilets. Public toilets were for women. And so when the district councils 5-6 years ago started saying we can't afford the public toilets, they're not used enough, there were a lot of cutbacks that people will remember, the public toilets went. And they're a vital lifeline to, obviously not just to women, but it was women. It was mainly one woman in Wiveliscombe who said, we've got to save them in Wiveliscombe. And fair play to her. They were saved. The town council picked them up and we run them. There's lots of talk about whether we need them as they are or where they should be. But it's just a really simple thing like that. But if you don't have a public toilet when you come to somewhere like Wiveliscombe and you come to do your shopping, what are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly. It just shows actually it's the local grassroots campaign that make the difference, don't they? And from those sort of acorns, great oaks grow, and that public loo's vital. But this is an example, isn't it? So I mean, just sort of thinking really about what are you doing now? What else? What do you do within your work and your role that you think, in terms of how you support women have their own voice now? in the work you do?
In the council, or what I'm doing with the kids?
Well, with the kick, perhaps, yeah.
Okay, well, we're doing lots with Moorvale Creative, as you know. I've got a bit of an echo as well now. So we've got women's creative writing courses. We put together a magazine a couple of years ago that some people will be aware of, called Celebrating 100 Years of Change to Women's Lives. And that was a great magazine where lots of people wrote articles. We had, you know, if you were talking about literature, a woman called Charlotte McCandless, she put together her top 10, one from each decade, books. I did the same for music of female artists, and we had a timeline running through it that I put together, which was all the acts of parliament, lots of anecdotal stuff, the first women who did X, Y, or Z, particularly politically. And so we did that under Moorvale Creative, and we're still doing that. That rolled into the creative writing. We're running I'm running guitar classes, vocal technique classes, and lots of women are coming to these things online. In fact, I would say more, perhaps because I'm a woman, perhaps because of how I advertise things, we pick up a lot of women coming to our courses, and we pick up mainly women coming to our Body Voice Connection, which we've got one coming on Saturday. They're great for physical and mental health. We put together yoga, meditation, chanting, breath work, de-stressing and rejuvenating, basically. So we do, yeah. Oh, thank you. There's so masses going on, and go to the Facebook page, because that's where you'll find all the current events. Moorvale Creative CIC.
Well, on that note, I think we should have a song, Fodo.
Okay.
And then we'll pass over to Marilyn and Jane. But yeah, it'd be great to have a song, cheer us all up, keep us going. And I haven't got should I have picked up the lyrics somewhere?
I sent them in an email, but I only sent them today.
And it's probably to my, and I don't think I can pick that up. Anyway, I'll just hum along.
Okay, everyone will know the sisters are doing it for themselves. I'm just going to have to turn the light out of my eyes a bit. So I hope you can all still see me, and you can all still hear me, and that I can remember how to play it. Now there was a time when we used to say that behind every great man there had to be a great woman. But in these times of change, you know that's no longer true. So we're coming out of the kitchen, 'cause there's something we forgot to say to you. We said the sisters are doing it for themselves, standing on their own 2 feet and clinging on their own bell. Rest of the sisters are doing it for themselves. Now this is a song to celebrate conscious liberation of the female state. Mothers, daughters, and their daughters too. Woman to woman, we're singing with you. The inferior sex, well, it just got a new exterior. We got doctors, lawyers, politicians too. Everybody, take a look around. Can you see, can you see, can you see? There's a woman right next to you. You say the sisters, they're doing it for themselves, standing on your own 2 feet and ringing on their own bell. Say the sisters are doing it making stories, and we ain't laying plans. Don't you know that a man still loves a woman, and that woman still loves a man? See, there was a time when they used to say that behind every great man, well, there has to be a great woman. And these times have changed, you know that is no longer true. So we're coming out of the kitchen, 'cause it's something we forgot to say to you. We said the sisters are doing it for themselves. Sisters are doing it for themselves. Oh yeah, the sisters are doing it for themselves.
Woo, well done, Fodo. That's all cheered us all up. Oh,
Thank
roll on.
you.
Live, some more live music. Well, thank you, Fodo, for cheering us up. And I think our soon over, but we'll join in at the end of other support groups, I'm sure. Okay, thank you, Fodo. Well, I'd like to hand back over to Jane and Marilyn now.
Thank you. That was really great. I really enjoyed that. Cheer me up. So I did Marilyn Simon. Thank you for coming along, Marilyn. And Marilyn's going to talk to us about the WI, which is the largest women's organisation in the UK.
Good morning, everybody. Nice to be here. All a bit of a shock, all being asked yesterday, I think it was. Anyway, I brought along my hat that I made, very WI fashion. Probably can't see me now.
Well, that's fabulous.
Which I was invited to a suffragette party a couple of years ago back in Buckinghamshire, which is where I came from, and where I joined and started doing WI things. And the WI was formed in Wales, really, and England and Wales in 1915. So very much at the same time as the suffrage movement. So very much still with the theme today of empowering women and things that women can do. So my background is that I worked in pathology, actually, for the NHS for nearly 50 years. And interestingly enough, I never came across this feeling that I was not an empowered woman. I found all the time that I was working alongside my male colleagues, doctors and scientists. And we had equal pay right from the day one when I started working in 1963. And I didn't actually ever encounter those feelings that so many of you have had of unfairness in my life. Anyway, that's not really anything to do with the WI, but that was just a personal thing. So I moved from Bucks down to Somerset in 2016. And my friends back in Bucks, where I'd lived all my life, not in the same house, said, I'm absolutely mad. Why am I doing that? And I said, well, I needed to start a new life. I needed to be near the seaside. Buckinghamshire is very landlocked, nowhere near the sea. And I bought my little tiny thatch cottage near in Dunster. And I said to my friends, don't worry about it. I will do two things. I will continue to belong to the WI, and I know I will make new friends, and I will continue to go to church. And both of those things have proved me right in that I have masses and masses of friends here. And one of my WI friends back in Buckinghamshire said, Marilyn, you're making a big mistake. You need the NHS, because I wasn't well. And I said, do you know what? I think Somerset have doctors. I think Somerset have nurses. I think there are hospitals there as well. So it's a funny misconception that we all have that in different places in England don't have the same facilities. So tell a little bit about the history of the WI. It was back in the late 1890s in Canada, where groups of women got together to, particularly in rural areas, to learn from one another about how to look after their families, how to cook, and how to exist, really. And it was as a result of that somebody to do with the agricultural movement came to give a talk in the UK and brought the idea of a women's group to Wales, actually. And at that wonderful place in North Wales on Anglesey, Landfair PG, I'm sure somebody out there can actually recite it properly. Back in 1915, the first meeting of women took place under the auspices of the Women's Institute. We've modernised that now. We call ourselves WI. No longer are we the Women's Institute. And from there, the idea of educating women grew. And today we have over 300, what's it? Just a minute, I'll tell you. We have over 6,300 WIs throughout England and Wales. It's an England and Welsh thing, the WI. It's but the Scots and the Northern Irish have their particular version, but the National Federation of Women's Institutes is actually England and Wales. So there's over 230,000 women are members. So it's a very, very big group of women that together have tremendous say in matters, and over the last 100 years have been involved in many campaigns, just like Fodo was mentioning, really, with the women's movement. So a very similar sort of thing. So it started particularly in rural communities, and you can imagine in Somerset, we have many WIs in Somerset that are celebrating their 100 years since their formation. My own one in Dunster was 100 last year. Williton were 100 a couple of years ago. And so it was a very, very important social event for women in those days. Interestingly, 100 years ago, Dunster WI had 123 members. That's phenomenal for the small village. We now have about 35 to 40. But 100 years ago, it was one of those unusual support groups where women, if they did work, they worked mainly on the farms, but most of them were bringing up their families, and their husbands were working on the farms. So they had nothing. We had no television, very little newspapers, so not very much information about how to look after your families, health, and other things like cooking and education for your children. So it's an extremely, extremely important organisation. And over the years, it's changed, and it's encompassed what's current for the time. So it was very important when it first set up during the First World War, 1915. A lot of the men had gone to war. The women were having to deal with all sorts of things on their own. And they joined together in their WIs to learn from each other and to support each other. And this continued on through in the Second World War. And that was we were very, very involved then. And really it's then that we got our name of Jam in Jerusalem, I think. The women in the Second World War going out and collecting berries and things to make the jam from in the hedgerows, and to cook and to grow all their food in. So they were then the ones that were digging their gardens and having their allotments, etc. It's now extremely sort of over 100 years later, the WI is still very, very important for women. It's not only in the rural communities, but also in the towns. And you will find that some of the modern WIs, the ones that are very go ahead, that do all sorts of interesting things, are actually town based. But the rural ones are still there. But they're struggling. A lot of them are struggling because they're a lot of really elderly ladies who joined the WI as young women, as young mums in their early 20s, and have been members ever since. And a lot of those, sadly, obviously, they're ill, they're old, and they're ill, and the WIs are struggling because of that, because very few younger people are moving into the villages. If they are moving in, they don't really fancy joining the WI. They've got a slightly, I think, old-fashioned view of it, although it is modernising. And in the WI, we do all sorts of interesting things, which I'll come on to. I think the days of women these days is much more complicated. Most of them, through the choice of their own or through financial reasons, work now. So they have this awful juggling of their families, of taking their children to school, or childminders, going to work, coming home, cooking, clean, and doing all the things that women have to do, even if, together with their men that support them or don't have men to support them. There isn't time to go to things like WI and belong. But it does become extremely popular for people who have moved to the area, who've retired to the area. And it's an absolutely wonderful way of making new friends and gaining new support. And I would say that's the majority of women who belong to the WI would say that's the most important part of it. It's support, friendship, fellowship, meeting like-minded people, and it has enormous success doing that. Having said that, we do have throughout the country, we have some very, very go-ahead young WIs. Some they don't call themselves just Dunster WI. They call themselves all sorts of funny names, and there's some in London, and they get their names from pop groups. So Fodo, you would like the names of some of them that they call themselves, the Stones and Roses and things like that. And so in Somerset we have the Bridgewater Firecrackers, and I think Jane belongs to the Taunton Divas, don't you?
I do indeed, yes. And I can relate what you were saying just now, because I moved up from Devon in June 18, and I only knew two people in Taunton. That was my daughter, and my daughter-in-law's mother lived here. I didn't know anybody else, so I joined a WI. It was one of the first things I did, and it's just been brilliant for me. I've made so many friends, and I've been able to go out with people. There's lots of events and subgroups, like I belong to the book club, and so that's been good, as well as making friends. It's made me read things that I wouldn't normally choose to read, so it makes you think about other issues. There's just so much to do. I've done arts and crafts, and been to cookery classes and learned about vegetarian cooking, And yeah, I've got a great network of friends, so it's been brilliant for me. And the Taunton Dean Divas, as you say, they're in the town. They're quite a big group. So when I go to the monthly meetings, or when I did before we were in lockdown, there's probably 70 or 80 ladies in the group. So, you know, the meetings are variable as well. So when I do book club, we then meet in somebody's house, and it's probably between maybe 10 to 14 people. So then you've got a closer, smaller group. It's a little bit more intimate. But yeah, brilliant.
That's right. That's exactly it. Jane's sort of perfectly described it. So she belongs to a very large WI. I set up and I'm secretary of a fairly large WI in Orcombe. Minehead WI is very big WI with 60 members, mainly retired ladies, and they had a waiting list. So it was obvious that it was time we set up another one. And my role within Somerset WI is as a WI advisor, and there are about 8 of us, and we are dotted around the county. And we support about up between sort of 12 and 20 WIs. So not only do I know my own WI, but I know these other 12, 13 that I now support. And they've all become my friends too. It's absolutely fantastic. So I support the WIs between Minehead and Bridgewater, basically. So it's the Williton, Watchet, Bicknoller, Crocombe, and then on the ones on the Quantocks, so the ones up on the Sturt Marshes. So I've got to learn an awful lot about the geography of Somerset since I've moved here as well. I'm going out. So the other thing about them is that they're all absolutely different, and they meet at different times of the day. So we've got some that meet in the mornings, some in the afternoons, and then we have evening ones that are particularly suitable for the people who go to work. So there's something for everybody within the WI. And it was set up as an education thing. So like Jane said, there's loads of things to learn. There's always courses to do. And we used to have Denman College, which was our main training college in Oxfordshire. But during this last year, that has been sold and closed. But in Somerset, we're a very go-ahead federation, Somerset WIs. And we're working very hard to set up more courses, probably at Dillington House near Ilminster. So there'll be, but all through lockdown, we've been having a weekly Zoom meeting with a speaker, which has been extremely interesting. And we've been able to do Denman at home courses, which costs a little bit, £5 to join in for a 1 or 2 hour course in absolutely everything you could imagine. So that's been, and it's one of these wonderful things that out of this pandemic and lockdown, we're all learning to do new things now. So we've all become a little bit more techno. We're all learning a lot more, and we're learning a lot more about each other because of having smaller Zoom coffee and chat meetings. We're getting to know a lot about each other, which is really nice. So one of the main things that the WI is strong at is campaigns, and that's something that I think Jane particularly wanted me to talk about. The WI is absolutely what you make it. The more involved you get in it, the more you get out of it. It's just like life, isn't it? So there's everything you want it to be, and it's here to inspire you. And over the 100 years, each year, the WI, they write resolutions about something that they think that could be improved. And I was so interested to hear you talking about the public toilets, Fodo, because I wrote a resolution when just at the time when they were all going to be closed, when the funding was taken away from them. I wrote a resolution absolutely to take forward to National about how important they are. So I did get some support from the local councillors for that. But unfortunately, it depends. There's about 150 resolutions are suggested every year by different WIs. And then there's a shortlisting thing, and it was not on the short list. So this year's shortlist, the thing that we voted on this year and has come out as top this year, has been one about signs of ovarian cancer. Often the resolutions involve some health matter, and of course that's always very close to members' hearts, and they seem to always manage to do those. But over the years, 1922, we fought for women police officers. So that was these are some of the things that we've done. So in 1920s, it was World Peace, which of course was something after the First World War. And 2012 was more midwives, and 1922 was women police. We were also the force behind the Take Litter Home campaign, which I think is so important again now, and we ought to bring that back, because we're all having problems, aren't we, with the litter. We're working together with Somerset Wildlife, and we're also, as All Comers WI, we're working together with Plastic Free Minehead. So it's all those kind of issues that we feel strongly about, and because there's so many of us in bulk, we can make a difference. I've just got some comments about that WI members have made about what the WI means to them. And if I've got time, I'll just read some of these out. I've always been shy, not a confident speaker, but through the WI, I learnt to stand in front of a group and to chair meetings. So that I think is a bit like you're saying with your village agent and your work on the local councils, that the WI does give women the opportunity to do those kind of things. No one is excluded. Everyone brings something different. I try and leave a trail of members everywhere I go. I promote it to everyone. The WI has given me access to a wealth of information. I always get an answer to a question, and usually very sage advice. The ladies I have met are so amazing. They became an immediate group of friends. I joined, then I got my mum to join too. These are the kind of comments that I think women that do join the WI enjoy. Women become invisible at 50. Unless you're a mum or a wife, it gives you something for yourself. You still figure in society. It's like a family. And I think that's what's been so strong during this pandemic. We've all supported one another. We've kept in touch. And what we must remember is that there are still a lot of elderly ladies who either don't have the internet at home, don't want it, and they still need support. And that is quite difficult in this world of IT, isn't it? It's very easy to send out an email to all our members with more training courses, but we have to remember the ladies that don't have that.
Of course, yeah.
I don't know how much more you want me to say.
That's been really, really interesting, Marilyn. I mean, I've learned a lot there, and it's great to hear how Women's Institute are involved in, working with other local groups as well, those local campaigns, because you say you've got critical mass, and it's a great way and gentle way to involve people, isn't it? And to it's a really amazing, supportive organisation. Jane, do you want to mention anything else about the WI and what it's meant for you?
I think we've covered.
Because it comes back to that support, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I just think, I'm so pleased that I joined, and, obviously I do activities with my friends away from the group as well, and it's been fantastic. Yeah. So thank you, Marilyn, for coming along and talking to us. That was interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think there's some information about, if anyone's interested in joining, there's on the chat, I think, is the WI website. And
yeah, it's been put up there. So people can find out more. But that's really great. Thank you, Marilyn.
if you look on the website, and then you can look up Somerset, and there's all the details for that too there. So we've recently moved our headquarters from Taunton to Bridgewater, actually. So we're just getting our new house up and running in Bridgewater.
And have you been meeting online, presumably during lockdown?
Some of us have. I mean,
Yes, you
some
can.
of the
Yeah,
little WIs that I support, like Fiddington and Netherstowe, places like that, haven't been able to, because they're mainly very elderly ladies that don't. But because they're in a little village, they've been keeping in touch. But All Comers, which is the All Come, we've had monthly meetings via Zoom. We have a chat, coffee and chat morning on a Wednesday morning, every Wednesday morning. And out of our 50 signed up members, we have 26 that have taken part in the Zoom meetings. There are other people who have email, but they have other things to do, like they're homeschooling their grandchildren and things like that.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of subgroups, like Jane does with her thing, and that's where you really get to, gelling with and you find like-minded people. When I moved down here, my sister said to me, "You'll soon find your tribe," and I think that's what we do.
It's true, isn't it? People do.
We all find, we've got a really strong gardening group, and we have an allotment in Minehead. And they've been all last year, they were up there growing things. We have a rambling group. We have a going out to lunch group, going to the theatre, cinema, those sort of things together. And that's lovely for women who are on their own, who don't normally have anyone to go with. And the other thing about WI and going out with them is you feel safe. It's a safe environment for women. So it's great. It's lovely.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a monthly Zoom meeting, a book club meeting, but the other thing is that we have like the WhatsApp group as well, so we can still text each other, which is a good way of keeping in touch. So anyway, I think we better leave that there. I'm conscious of the time ticking by. So thank you, Marilyn. And just finally, I just wanted to give out some information about some local support groups for women. We've got the Towns Women Guild, where you can find more information about that at www.tg.com/guild/, and that's a friendship group for women. There's the NelsonTrust.com, which has centres in Gloucestershire, Swindon and Bridgewater. And they provide a women-only space where there's a wide range of support needs that can be addressed in a safe and supportive environment. There's also Serotonin International. The web address there is https://sigbi.org. And that's part of a worldwide organisation of women that's linked to the United Nations. And they're involved with lots of other groups and charitable organisations aiming to transform lives through education, empowerment and enabling opportunities. Obviously, we've already had the address for the WI, and for like www.near.co.uk. It's a place you can go to look for a list of baby and toddler groups in the area. So I think that's it. I don't know if anybody else has anything they want to say today. No, is that it from everybody?
I was just going to mention, I know we're not allowed to talk about politics, but I just wanted to say there is the Women's Equality Party nationally. It's got a really interesting website as well. So again, there are other wider organisations if people are interested in the information. And again, as agents, we try and find local groups to support local women, don't we, Jane? And make sure we're supporting all people of all colours and ages. And it's about making sure that we connect people to the right local support groups. So if anybody wants to know more about local women's groups locally, we'll do our best to find the right one for them.
Okay, so I think we can leave it there for this morning now, and Talking Cafe for today. Thank you for spending time with us this morning, and thank you to Fodo and Marilyn for your talks. It's been very informative, and thank you to everyone for watching Talking Cafe. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.